Hello and welcome to the Owl's Nest, and welcome to week 3 of the Overwatch League, where the homestands will be played in Washington this weekend. And there's a lot of great matchups to look forward to, but let's go ahead and start with looking at week 2. And just a heads up, I am not going to be using the fan vote from last week because unfortunately I had the video uploaded a little bit too close to matches. I had it about 3 hours before, and there just wasn't enough data for it to be really relevant. We got about like 5 or 6 submissions, so I'm going to go ahead and post this video a day before the matches, and then we'll get the fan vote for these week 3 matches coming up, but we'll get there in a second. So let's go ahead and start with the week 2 matchups. And first we're going to have Florida versus Houston. And I think for Florida, it was a surprise seeing Carrion in the starting lineup. I think we were expecting to see Fate alongside Gargoyle, but he looked great on main tank. And also the DPS core for Florida of Yaki, BQB, and Saya Player all looked really strong. However, I think the message of this matchup isn't really with Florida, it's more with Houston. And I gotta be honest, Houston just looks like a mess right now. They are very clearly lacking synergy, and that Lucio Briggs support line was really not promising and did not work well for the team. And I'm also not very sold on Blaze's McCree right now. There was some rumor that Linkser was sick this weekend, but he confirmed on Twitter he just got benched, so I don't really know what's going on with this Houston lineup. They definitely have a lot of problems to work out, but I think it's a win for Florida nonetheless, and I predicted actually Houston to win this 3-1. And Florida won it 3-0. It was not very close. So I think big troubles ahead for Houston, but you have reasons to be optimistic if you're a Florida Mayhem fan. Next up is the first match for the hometown team last weekend, and that was Washington versus Philadelphia. And I think two of the biggest surprises for Philadelphia's lineup is they used Ivy instead of EQO. And Ivy and Carpe looked great together. They put Carpe on the hit scan characters, obviously, and then they had Ivy on the May, and he looked really good there. And then also Poco over Fury. They're both diva specialists, but I think they probably picked Poco because he's a bit more of an aggressive diva, and he looked good in that role. So that was a good decision for Philadelphia. And as for Washington, I thought Elevote looked really strong, even without Lolshish, his normal tank partner. And I thought Roar looked better than he did on the Gladiators. So I think there is still definitely moments of light, even though Washington lost this one. And that C9 was really funny to watch by Arc, as well as the Philadelphia Fusion's Carpe clutching out map 1. It was fantastic to see. And I don't think Washington is necessarily a bad team, as I did going into this season. I just think more Philadelphia is better. And so my prediction was Philly to win this 3-0, and I thought Washington looked better than expected as they took a map off and made it 3-1. Now we move on to the Sunday matches, and we first had the Washington Justice playing the Houston Outlaws, and all my sentiments for the Outlaws pretty much from main. This time though, we did see Repel swap in a few maps, and it didn't seem much better, which is a bit unfortunate. So all the issues weren't really Raucus's fault, it was just more of a synergy thing. And I think they have to rework a lot coming into their matchups this weekend. I'm nervous for them, and they're doing a lot worse than I expected. As for Washington, I think they looked about as strong as they did at the end of last season in Stage 4. I thought Stratus's Doomfist was a very pleasant surprise. Doomfist isn't necessarily strong in this meta, but he looked great when he used him against Houston, and I think Stratus is just really comfortable on that hero, and it's nice to see that his skill is almost beating out the meta. Anyway, my prediction for this matchup was Houston winning it 3-2, but of course they lost this one 3-0 as well to Washington, and I think Washington has to feel pretty good going into this homestand. Next up is going to be the Florida Mayhem versus the Philadelphia Fusion, and I have kind of the same feelings for Florida that I did have for Washington when they played the Fusion. It's not necessarily that they look bad, I just think that Philly looks a little bit better. I think Florida definitely looks very improved, especially to where they finished last year. They were obviously the worst team for the Overwatch League in Season 2, and the second worst team in Season 1, and I think they won't finish there this year, which is nice to see. I thought Saya Player versus Carpe on Widow was very fun to watch, and also Sato looks really good. A lot of the doubt for the Fusion lineup was Sato, and he looks great, so I think Philly is definitely a championship contender this year, and this could be just a really strong Fusion lineup. Anyway, my prediction for this matchup was it going 3-0 for the Philadelphia Fusion, and that did end up being correct. Now let's go ahead and move it on to this weekend's matches, and I'm excited for this first one. It's going to be the New York Excelsior going up against the Philadelphia Fusion, and for me, this is the matchup of the week. This is the 1 and 2 teams going at it, and we're going to find out who's the best team in the Atlantic Conference. I think both of these teams have made great upgrades so far and have looked very impressive in their showings. I think Philadelphia has the more impressive wins of the two of them, but I think New York has the slightly better roster, so I expect this to be a really close and fun matchup. Now for my prediction, I have New York taking it 3-2, but I'm not even confident in that. I think Philadelphia could get it. Anyway, I'm going to turn this over to you guys. Go ahead and vote in the Google form in the description for who you think is going to win the New York Excelsior versus the Philadelphia Fusion matchup. Now, if last matchup was the matchup of the week, this could also be the matchup of the week for all the wrong reasons, and that is going to be the Boston Uprising versus the Houston Outlaws. I love both of these teams, however, they both have really looked like they are struggling going into their matchups so far in the season, and I just could see this going either way, but not for all the right reasons, in fact for all the wrong reasons. However, I am going to give the edge to Boston 3-2, and I think that's just because I think Boston has a little bit more synergy from what they had last year, whereas Houston looks like they are clueless out there. Even though I'm still not even confident in this prediction, it could go either way. I'm going to turn this over to you guys, so go ahead and vote for who do you think is going to win the Boston versus Houston matchup. Now for our first matchup for the homestand team, we have Paris versus Washington. And these are two surprise teams for me. I think they are both looking better than expected, and Washington looked really good last weekend in Philadelphia, and I think Paris surprised in their first homestand at New York. I think they held up a fight much better than people thought they would against London and against Toronto. And now we have to remember, Hanbin, their off-tank, is turning 18 as of a few days ago, so he is ready to go. Anyway, my prediction for this matchup, though, is going to be Washington taking it 3-1. I think Washington just looks a little bit better right now, and Paris still has a few things to work out, but I could see Paris taking this one too. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and turn the vote over to you guys, so go ahead and vote in that Google form for this matchup. Then, starting the Sunday matchups, we have the New York Excelsior versus the Houston Outlaws, and honestly guys, this could be a massacre. This might be the best team playing the worst team, and I just don't see NYXL playing down to Houston's level, and I don't think Houston's really going to play up to New York's level, so I have to give this one 3-0 to the New York Excelsior. I don't see Houston taking a map, and that's all I really have to say on it, unfortunately. I just don't think Houston really has it in them. Anyway, I'm going to turn the vote over to you guys. Who do you think is going to win the New York Excelsior versus the Houston Outlaws? I have a feeling I know who you guys are going to go with, but we'll turn it over to you guys nonetheless. Then for our second matchup, I think this is an interesting one. It's Toronto Defiant versus the Philadelphia Fusion. And I still have my reservations about the Toronto Defiant after week 1. They did beat Paris, but they didn't look very impressive doing it, in my opinion. Whereas I think Philadelphia looked really good against pretty competitive teams. So I think there's a pretty likely chance that Toronto could be humbled here after feeling good about a week 1 win, and that's just because Philadelphia is looking so strong. So anyway, my prediction for this matchup is going to be Philadelphia taking it 3-1. But I will turn it over to you guys now. Go ahead and vote for who you think is going to win this matchup. And finally, I have the final matchup of the week, which is going to be the London Spitfire going up against the Washington Justice. And unfortunately for London, I have just not quite been 100% sold on their rebuild. There are definitely some bright spots, like I think Babel and Glister both look pretty strong on DPS, but I don't think that's enough to really beat the Washington Justice from where they're at right now. Washington looked really competitive against Philadelphia, and they slaughtered the Houston Outlaws, so I think Washington shouldn't have too much of a problem beating these guys, but London could surprise. Anyway, my prediction for this matchup is going to be Washington winning it 3-1, but I will turn over to you guys to go ahead and vote on it in the description down below. Anyway, let's go ahead and wrap this all up. I think this is going to be a great weekend for the Overwatch League, and though I'm bummed we haven't seen some of the Asian teams play due to the coronavirus outbreak, so far this season has been great so far, once we get over the production issues, but I don't think that's too bad. And if we're looking at just the Overwatch that's been played, it's been awesome, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Anyway, if you guys all enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe. I do these videos every week, plus some editorials and some live streams, and I'd love to have you guys join the Owl's Nest. I hope you all enjoyed, and have a great weekend, enjoy the matchups, and I'll talk to you guys later.